everybody, to another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I am your host, Bill's season ticket holder, Drew Gear. Over there is my producer, Chris Kruger. And this is a what the hell did you do? All right, guys, every week, Chris finds a way to top himself and how he annoys me. And I'm happy that you all get to be an audience to it because clearly this is a man who is just, like, you talk about real life trolling. You know Chris's shtick about the offseason and how he likes to serve cocktails.
You got to hold that up for the camera so they can see it.
This is the monstrosity that just got handed to me. Now, I don't know what kind of a venue you think I'm in, sir. Like, I am in a podcast studio. I don't see Hawaiian shirts. I don't see a tiki motif around the room. I'm almost offended that you just handed me this.
You did get more fronds than I did. You have 3. I only put 2 in mine. Look at that. Beautiful cocktail. Highball. I'm going to call you know what I'm going to call this? Mark's Garage. That's what I'm going to call this cocktail.
Why? Because it has a bunch of useless crap thrown into random corners.
Like Mark's Garage.
And yet you could spend all night out there just doing nothing in it?
Yeah.
Guys, I see a lime. I see a giant wedge of grapefruit. Thank you for joining us on YouTube Live. For those of you streaming, for those of you listening on audio only, you are missing out because this beverage looks absurd.
Oliver.
I don't even know how to drink it with all this crap in it. Can I, before I sip this, let me have a conversation with you about Bloody Marys. You know, we used to be a proper country. I used to be able to go to a bar and just say, hey, can I have a Bloody Mary or a, depending on how close to the border I was, I could say, hey, can I get a Caesar? Now, I go to a bar and I order a Bloody Mary and they go, oh, well, which one? And I go, I don't know, the one with vodka and tomato juice and maybe some hot sauce in it. And they go, well, we have a bacon pizza roll Bloody Mary, or we have one that has onion rings, or we have one that we put a whole fried chicken sandwich on a skewer and we stick it in the top. And that's about the point that I flip over everything in the bar like a game of Charlie McDennis and Always Sunny, and I just proceed to get, it's one of two things. I either leave or I get unreasonably drunk in public. I hate this trend of drinks with a ton of crap in it. I don't know what we're doing. Why can't I just get what you made me in a glass without all of this? What did I do to you?
Because it annoys you. That's why there's fronds. There's a lime in there. There's no lime juice in there. It's just in there for the garnish. I'm going to have to try to remember what I did with this. I went an ounce over that 4-ounce template I've talked about on the podcast before because we are in a highball glass here. I did 2 ounces of grapefruit juice, a half ounce of lemon juice, half ounce of a 151 rum, a half ounce of a Atlantico private cask, 1 ounce of a gold rum, and 3/4 ounce of Italico, which is like a bergamot liqueur, and then a half ounce of, I think I did Demerara syrup.
You don't even know what you're putting in here?
This is the problem with rum cocktails. You can go so heavy with the ingredients that you just forget what you do.
This is the problem. This is the problem of drinking with someone like me is that you can just throw random crap that you don't even remember into a glass, and I'm going to keep drinking it.
Sip it because it's delicious.
Also, Oliver in the comments, used to be a proper country. I'll tell you when, 1776, buddy. Yeah, pack it up.
Chris emptied his garbage disposal into a glass.
I love it. Guys, we are here talking
Is it good?
It is good. It's very smooth, and I don't want to admit it out loud. I tried to avoid saying it at all. I do like that this is stuck to the ice cube, so I can't even yank it out of here. I'm stuck like this, people. I'm stuck with this ridiculous cocktail. I'm going to leave it over here so it's constantly in shot, just so people know how stupid you are. Guys, we are just days away from the kickoff of the end of, well, first of all, the end of Buffalo Bills training camp and the kickoff of the 2024 NFL preseason. And I want to start by talking about the preseason pledge. You know, this thing, I think Jeremy White from WGR 550 is usually the one who champions this. But it's the concept that we as fans aren't dumb. We've done this before. We are going to watch the preseason objectively, right? Wrong. We're not going to freak out over every little uptick in production or star performance or bad performance because it's all being kind of done in a meaningless vacuum. Wrong. Chris, what do you think about the NFL preseason and my ability to maintain pragmatism?
Well, if you saw me last week, remember Keon Coleman? He made that awesome catch. He's the greatest thing ever. He made another one this week in practice. He's the greatest thing we've ever seen. I don't give a fuck until I see it in pads when it fucking matters. Am I going to go apeshit when Keon Coleman catches a pass from Mitch Trubisky? No, because Mitch Trubisky's not playing in the regular season. I need to see game tape in pads, Josh Allen to Keon Coleman, to go, okay, I can see it. I can't get there in practice. We're talking practice.
What are you, Allen Iverson?
This is practice.
This is practice, brother. All right, so first of all, ahead of this preseason game, a couple things to get out of the way. One, I will not be there. Two, Allen will not play. Three, a whole bunch of starters that everybody's interested about will not play. And also, breakers of the preseason pledge, there is no penalty. Freak out if you want to. Lord knows I'm gonna be at a pool party, and I am going to be screaming profanity if Mitch Trubisky throws an interception. Not that it matters. Not that it means anything. I don't know why I viscerally react to these things the way that I do. I just know that it's our brand, Chris. I can't turn it off, and for some reason, some of these sickos who are out here watching this right now enjoy it.
Ralph Wilson Sr. in the comments, injuries are the only thing that we freak out over these games.
And that's probably fair. Like, I don't care what we learn over the next 3 weeks. What I don't want to see is a slew of injuries. Let's start there. I mean, that is, Chris, even on the Bills, remember the Bills teams that used to go, like, get swept in the preseason?
Yeah, all of them.
Oh, the drought era teams that would go like 1-3 during the 4-game preseason. Even then, I knew enough to be like, well, listen, it went poorly, but at least no one critical got injured. That's really the upshot. It's the thing that every team should be hoping for, and it's why most teams, if they're smart, don't play their starters.
Yeah, news came out today. Kyler Murray, his first game action is going to be week 1. He's not even playing in the preseason.
Which is not a terrible idea if you have a quarterback who you've already seen what your team looks like without him. That's not a terrible place to live. Where you just say, listen, I'll resign myself to losing a whole bunch of preseason games if it means not jeopardizing the future of my football team. Now, we've got a lot to get to tonight, a lot of interesting things to talk about, one of which, why are people watching the Olympics? Chris, if I'm being snarky, like, the Olympics suck. It's terrible. It stinks on ice. The summer games are bad. I think the winter games are good only because there's real skin in the game. If you do the skeleton, like if you lose in beach volleyball, all you do is go be like man or woman. All you do is go be physically attractive somewhere else on a beach. Nothing terrible happens to you. You just lost and you got embarrassed on TV for 5 minutes. What if you lose the skeleton race? What if you're the guy who's wearing something thinner than paper on a metal sled that weighs 18 pounds, rocketing 100 miles an hour down a sheet of ice? Like, that gets me going because there's real skin in the game. Like, there's a consequence when you lose. I think that's why the winter games have and always will be more important to me.
They're more important to me because one thing only, ice hockey.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I watch. You know what I did? I took a picture of my cocktail and I put it in our DMs with Greg and Aaron from Cover One, and they do enjoy that. That's how I get to piss you off. Cocktail garnish.
I don't even know that you can call this garnish. It's literally like it's foliage in a glass. So with that said, looking ahead as I go over my notes right here next to me, I'm looking at 5 things ahead of this week's preseason game. The first of which is the kick return game. Isn't that one of the coolest things that we have to look forward to? And when you think about it schematically, right? Like we spent almost 20 minutes with Cover One's Anthony Prohaska talking about how this is more akin to rugby than it is football. And, this weekend I was lucky enough to, so we had the Grills Mafia steak competition in Lancaster, New York. And I was lucky enough to have one of the co-owners of the company with me, Mr. Reed Ferguson, there in attendance for the awards ceremony. And then afterwards, he and I were just catching up. And I was talking to him about how training camp was going and got to pick his brain a little bit about this new kickoff stuff. And it's just as, I'll say this, he's just as excited and also just as there's just as much NFL-wide trepidation as there is amongst us as fans when it comes to what this thing is going to turn out to be. Because every football team is operating in a vacuum thinking to itself, well, I think we have the plan. I think we have the right combination of tactics and personnel to make this kick return work. But nobody really knows. And then he goes, don't be surprised if what you see people do in the preseason doesn't actually line up with what they're going to roll out in the real season when it matters. Because every team, and he reaffirmed this for me, every team has had the internal conversation that if we get this right, if we're the team that has the answer, then we're going to have this giant advantage to start the season. So don't let the cat out of the bag. But with that said, you're going to have to run it. And those guys who are going to run it are going to need reps. And so it's going to be interesting to see how much they try to hide and how much they can hide in trying to execute what is a brand new kickoff for the very first time. Now, Chris, some of this might be that you just don't have the guys you intend on having do it on a starting basis, do it right up until the last game, right?
Yeah. You don't want to show your hand.
So maybe this week it's a different set of personnel who are taking the kickoffs. But here's what I thought was interesting. I looked at the roster, and I question whether we even have the horses right now on the roster to execute what this new world of kick returning is going to require. Here's why I say that. If you were to try to relate to rugby right now and say that the Buffalo Bills in 2024 are going to need more athletic big men, and that's how we're going to stack the field and try to create running lanes for the returners to run through. First of all, the guys I'm looking at are guys like Kingsley Jonathan, Javon Solomon, Will Clapp, Tylen Grable. These are guys all trying to make the roster who have size, who have a little bit of athleticism and speed, and who probably need to prove that they can do special teams well in order to make the roster. So these are the guys I expect to see a lot of because that's going to be the reason that they stick. Not because they're qualifying for any sort of starters or backup reps. I think it's interesting that Kingsley Jonathan maybe has the inside track considering he played 41% of our special team snaps last year. And the rookies have size and athleticism on their side, but they don't have any kick return experience. That's for sure. Javon Solomon was a starter on his team in college, and I think it's one of those things that gets lost in all the draft talk. When people go, oh, well, you can just play special teams, and you can mark him down as your 50 end. Can you? Do you know that he's ever played special teams? Do you remember the running back? I think his name was Jonathan Williams.
For the Bills?
For the Bills.
Yes.
You think he was a 5th-round pick out of Arkansas?
Yes.
Nailed it. No matter how much of these things I drink, like a steel trap, my friend, as long as you're not my wife asking me what you just asked me, or did you remember that thing that I asked you to get at the store, or literally anything else. If it's football related, I got you.
He was playing with the Redskins last year.
Of course, well, at that point, who wouldn't?
Look at that career history.
1, 2, 3. Bills, Broncos, Saints, Colts, Lions, Redskins, Lions, Redskins, Giants, Redskins. So, like, he just floats around now. He's a floater. He's a journeyman's journeyman. He was drafted, and it wasn't that he was bad. It was just that he didn't play any special teams. And so in that, the Bills had no use for him on the roster, and so we let him go. I think that a lot of these depth guys, when you're a starter on your collegiate football team, it actually might hurt you trying to make a bid for a depth role. And this goes for any position because that's not your game. You've never done it before. Now, that's not to say you can't. It's not to say that if you don't have the personal initiative and that you're not coachable, you can't learn how to do it. But there is an art to doing it. But in this season where nobody knows what the hell is going on from a schematic standpoint or what's going to work, it's wide open. You could see a lot of turnover because, Chris, I look at what we had on the roster and what we've carried over into this season from last year. And if we have any hope of going with a big man alignment, like a rugby alignment with what you would call props, and having big physical guys paving the way for smaller runners to try to find running lanes behind them, I don't know. We're going to be in trouble because we've traditionally fielded smaller special teams units. Like tight end Quentin Morris and Reggie Gilliam were the only two players to finish in the top 8 for special team snaps who weighed more than 230 pounds. That's a problem if you're trying to lock horns with another team's offensive linemen and backup defensive ends. It really is. Right now, we don't seem to be built that much different. A lot of our guys are small. And then the Andy Isabella injury really complicates the returner situation because you're talking about Andy Isabella, Daquan Hardy, and I think, what's his name, Chris? Darrington Evans, running back by collegiate history, I guess, and then kind of where he worked out with position groups because of his body type. But ultimately, all he's ever been is a kick returner. I actually think that the Isabella injury opens up the door for Evans a lot. Because while Daquan Hardy was drafted with the idea that, we talked about it in our show we recorded earlier, this concept that Daquan Hardy was drafted to be a returner and also he has a little bit of defensive back acumen. He's been flashing his ability as a backup defensive back in training camp. He's been making interceptions. He's showing off his ball skills. Now, I don't know what he looks like against top-flight NFL competition, but I think I look at him the way I looked at a Cam Lewis, where I go, I don't know what you are, but you're showing me things that I would expect a backup to be capable of. So it's going to be interesting to see how the team thinks about him in that regard. But he was drafted with return acumen first. And yet now they've kind of adopted this style of kick return where I don't know that you necessarily need a small, fast guy. You might need a guy who's more built like a running back. And so if Isabella misses any significant time or, God forbid, can't come back, I think Darrington Evans all of a sudden with a strong preseason can make a push towards making this roster. And I'm going to be looking at how that all shakes out with a really keen eye. Now, Chris, I'm sure we'd like to believe that there won't be that many kick returns because the other team isn't going to score that many times, right?
Correct.
Alas, this is the preseason. And so with that in mind, another one of the things that I'm looking for is how are our coordinators going to fare? And when I think about this, like I just got done in our earlier show, kind of talking about week 2 in training camp, we were praising Bobby Babich for getting what seems to be the nod at play calling in 2024. But it's not just that we have a different play caller. It's also the way he's gone about it. According to every journalist who's been present, the thing that keeps coming back up is the aggressiveness of the pass rush calls. And the fact that the front 7, especially with the linebackers, are much more aggressive than they've been historically. Now, I think that's important. And I'm going to tell you why. Let me pull up my handy-dandy spreadsheet here.
Apparently, Caleb's playing on Saturday.
Oh, they're going to put Caleb Williams. Ooh, so guys, again, the preseason pledge, when the Bills lose by 10 points because they put their starters out and we didn't, please don't freak out. But no, when you think about Bobby Babich and just the concept that he's a more aggressive, he brings a more aggressive style and a more aggressive.
You see that in his wardrobe.
You do see it.
He's always Caputi ready.
Like a dude wearing a flat brim hat and an Affliction t-shirt with a fake gold chain.
I wonder if I'll have to look if I still have him on my computer. So Drew texted me, and I'll have to look at my garbage if I have him. Well, but you texted me earlier today, and you were like, "Hey, can you do a thumbnail and use Bobby Babich?" And I Googled Bobby Babich Bills. I gotta see if they're not in my garbage. I don't have them anymore. They're all like flat brim hat, gold chain, anything. I couldn't find anything with him looking like he's fucking ready to go to Cowboys with JP Lossman
now
on Chippewa.
Now, Chris, do you have the slide? Can you show our listeners and our viewers what it is I'm talking about here? When I talk about why the aggressiveness from Bobby Babich, and especially the way he utilizes our linebackers, is probably going to become important. Guys, when you look at this year over year, if you look at Sean McDermott's career as our defensive head coach, co-defensive coordinator, and eventually in 2023 defensive coordinator, there's a trend that lays out here if you want to see it. 2019, 31%, 2020, 2021, 28%. And then down and down, you look at where we rank in terms of where we blitz and the number of blitzes we send annually. I think it's interesting because you look at 2020, it's an outlier to me for a couple of reasons. First of all, Chris, coming out of 2019, we blitzed 31% of the time. We were 12th in the NFL. 2020, we didn't know that Josh Allen was going to take this crazy next step. Nobody could have prognosticated that he was in. Chris, remember the opening game of that season against the Jets? I bet you a Seagram's in the middle of the third quarter that Josh couldn't throw for 300 yards. Not because I doubted Josh, but because I hadn't seen a Bills quarterback throw for over 300 yards in years. It hadn't happened. So I was just going with what history had told me was possible. And I'm certain that if you're being a pragmatic NFL head coach, especially a defensive-minded one, you would have gone into the 2020 season with that on your mind. Going, look, my quarterback, he's got a cannon for an arm, but his accuracy is limited, and I don't really know if he has it in him to rebuild his mechanics. So we're going to try to give him as much support as we can. And as a defense, we're going to play a much more aggressive, takeaway-minded sort of brand of football. It was the highest blitz percentage of McDermott's entire career here in Buffalo. And so Chris, like that year, they couldn't have banked on Allen leading the second highest scoring attack in the NFL, right?
No.
Absolutely not. That would have been crazy to try to extrapolate after the way the 2019 season went. And even after that early slate of games where Allen was setting the world on fire, am I seeing, it's a small sample size compared to what you've already seen from him, so you don't want to change your approach defensively yet. You could also argue that some of that was necessitated by the talent that they had on the roster at the time. You go back to 2020, Chris, look at some of this. Do you remember the fact that Mario Addison and Jerry Hughes were both starters for our team, despite the fact that they were both over the age of 34?
I remember Mario Addison.
Those were our starting defensive ends. Daryl Johnson, the pterodactyl, was your defensive end 4. Whatever happened to him after he left Buffalo?
I think he's out of the NFL.
Yeah.
If anybody in the comments knows where he is, let Drew know. But I'm positive he's out of the NFL.
Levi Wallace was your cornerback too. Levi Wallace, CB2. Not that he was a slouch. I just think that, I don't know. You could argue, like Christian Benford is probably better now than Levi Wallace was then, right?
Yeah, Daryl Johnson, free agent.
Yeah. So you had better talent elsewhere or at least you had less talent elsewhere on defense than you currently do. And I think one of the more damning things was when you look at the defensive tackle room, Vernon Butler was for some reason starting for you. Remember that experiment?
Yeah.
Brandon Beane's like, oh, well, I drafted this guy, and I just know it can land. And it did not. It resoundingly did not. But it's worth noting that season, Tremaine Edmonds and A.J. Klein, as a strong side linebacker and a middle linebacker, combined for 136 blitz attempts. And that matters because it was the most of any Bills linebacker tandem before or since in Sean McDermott's career. The following year, they had 100 between Milano and Edmonds. By 2021, every single Bills linebacker on the roster combined for just 65 blitzes. The funny thing about the aggressive play style from 2020, that it seems like the team just formulated based off the back of what 2019 was, which some of you will remember. The game we had to beat the Steelers at the final gun when they had Duck Hodges, and we were having a rock fight with them over the fact that, like, hey, Duck Hodges versus Josh Allen.
According to PFF, he's better.
That was it. That was the conversation. And now you have people arguing about Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen. 2019 Josh and 2024 Josh are two totally different creatures. They don't even belong in the same genus or species. The aggression of that 2020 defense saved us. It's the reason that team made it to the AFC title game. They entered that season with a hyper-aggressive approach, and then on the back of a quarterback who all of a sudden could execute a masterful passing attack, things just started to work, and we started to win football games, and we started to win playoff games, and all of a sudden we find ourselves in the AFC title game. Like, it's sort of telling to me that year after year, thereafter, damn this cocktail, therefore, Chris, I'm all caught up in the wheels of my chair. Oh my God, it's doing the thing. It's taking me down. I don't know what's happening.
Your headphones are jacked up. You gotta stop drinking.
I'm calling the chair.
I didn't get so that Oliver over in England wants you to eat your cocktail. I don't know how. I've seen Drew come over to my place eating a green bell pepper as it's an apple. I've never seen him just take a bite out of a grapefruit or eat a whole pineapple frond.
That's it. We're doing wireless. I'm getting wireless things. These chairs just eat this headphone cord. So with that said, I look at this and I go, we have deficiencies on defense, especially on the back end with the safeties. And yet, we had deficiencies then on defense. Our defensive line wasn't as good as this defensive line that we're going to roll out in 2024. Our cornerback room is stronger now than it was then. We have better depth, and we certainly have better linebacker play. I mean, I hate saying this because, again, maybe it's recency bias, but I think that Terrell Bernard actually fits in here better than Tremaine Edmonds did. Is that a hot take? I don't know. Like, to say that Terrell Bernard last year, in his first year as a starter, was a better natural fit to the defensive system here in Buffalo than Tremaine Edmonds was in his first 2 or 3 years. Is that a fair statement to make?
I guess Tremaine Edmonds, he's pretty fucking good.
He's good.
But we couldn't pay him. That's why he's gone.
I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying
Bernard can fill the role.
Eat your cocktail. Damn it.
Yeah, I just talked about that, dude.
It's so bitter.
It's grapefruit.
God.
How do
people eat this for health purposes?
That was my my grandma Kruger, that was like her favorite breakfast is cutting a grapefruit in half and then just putting a shit ton of sugar on it and eating the grapefruit. That was my grandma Kruger's breakfast of choice.
Is it weird? Like my grandmother had a grapefruit spoon. It had like a serrated edge so that she could dig into the grapefruit.
See, I don't ever remember Grandma Kruger ever having that.
Yeah.
I just can picture being in her Fort Myers, Florida home every morning outside by the pool because we have money because we're white, just eating grapefruit.
Whoa.
And sugar.
You have money.
I like how you just went like you're done with the cocktail.
You straight to a UC.
Straight to a Utica club.
So guys, when I think about the pressure, right, and I think about what we need to bring, Bobby Babich has that. And I want to see it in the preseason. I want to see Bobby Babich maybe bring back a little bit of this 2020. You know, we kind of went down memory lane there, talking about the history of the team. And I think that we're bringing it back around with this conversation. Terrell Bernard seems to fit more naturally than Tremaine Edmonds did. And now you've got two linebackers. Like, think about Matt Milano. Matt Milano may not lead the team in pressures or sacks, but how many guys has he hit that are memorable? When Matt Milano hits the quarterback, when he comes with authority. I know because there was a little girl screaming. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Nick's daughter, one of our listeners, Nick, one of my favorites, his family came to watch the Bills-Jets game. Now, they're from Jersey. And he came to watch the Bills-Jets game with us here. And it was when Matt Milano just destroyed Mike White and sent him to the locker room. And his little daughter was heckling him as he's getting dragged off the field. And it's like when Matt Milano comes for your quarterback, like between, you know, if you ask Dolphins fans, he's dirty. But he hits quarterbacks with authority when he comes. You don't send him often because you like what he does against the run and the pass, but don't get it twisted. He can do the job. So can Terrell Bernard really, really well. And I think that the two of them together can give Bobby Babich, if he keeps up this aggressive approach, he can use that to kind of overcome some of the deficiencies in the defensive end room that we're going to talk about here to kind of round out the show here at the end. But
Oliver's grandma, her breakfast was a cigarette.
A cigarette?
Just a cigarette.
That's the best. I will say this too. I don't want to buy into the whole causation equals, correlation equals causation. But Chris, you saw in the slide that you showed everybody, the downward trajectory, right, of our blitz percentage.
Yeah.
How many times have we lost because of lost games against good football teams, usually in the postseason, because of conservative defensive play calling?
It's almost like McDermott takes over play calling because I'm the senior employee here. I've been here before. Let's fucking go conservative.
See, I think you're off base, but you're close. I think what it is that Sean McDermott's mindset was, well, now I have a quarterback who can score. Why expose my defense? Let's back off. Let's be more conservative. We don't need to send pressure. Let's just we can score points. And now, as soon as he knew he could score points, he started ratcheting things back, and he was comfortable taking a more passive approach. And then that passive approach against really aggressive offensive head coaches has been his undoing every single time. Whether it's Sirianni, whether it's the cheeseburger guy from Kansas City. Why can't I think of his name?
Andy Reid.
Whether it's Andy Reid, whether it's Sirianni, whether it's Doug Peterson, it doesn't matter. It's always his undoing because he just believes Josh will save his ass. And the worst part is it almost happened. He loses to Peterson in London when we played Jacksonville last year. Josh narrowed the gap inside of 14 minutes of football time. That's insanity. You played the worst game of football you've played in a year and a half. The most lackadaisical, not from a defensive standpoint, but from an offensive standpoint, just the most lax game. And then your quarterback goes, all right, Thanos mode and snaps his fingers, and all of a sudden it's a 5-point game. 1-score game. If we get this onside kick, we're going to go down there and score and win the game. And we just ran out of clock. Sean McDermott, like this passive approach of his, I think is a byproduct, of the fact that he always could trust that Josh was just going to go outscore the other team, and so he didn't have to take as many risks. Now he doesn't have that, which is why I think that it's the perfect time for Bobby Babich to take over play calling, and I'm really interested to see what he's going to bring to the table in the preseason. Obviously in this game, but in all of the games, especially when the starters start to mix in. And just to see how...
Will they?
Yeah, I think if they're smart, they keep like Vaughn out. I don't think you let him see the field until week 1. I think that you keep a lot of these guys out. But I want to see the intention to be aggressive, sending linebackers, A and B gap blitzes. Go back to getting 136 blitzes out of your linebacking core over the course of a season. I guarantee you it'll help buoy anything you think is wrong anywhere else on your defense. I just do. You also have to look at Joe Brady, right? Like, that's a thing. I wonder sometimes. Brady gets hired as the offensive coordinator. And now he's taking over, like, this is the preseason. So what it is it's a watered down rock, paper, scissors game of, hey, I'm going to run my most basic concepts against your most basic concepts because nobody's trying to tip their hand on anything. We're not trying to put tape out here. But at the same time, you can see how he as a play caller reacts to what the defense is doing, how he reacts to certain personnel packages. And I don't know, like you think about all of the offseason postulation and conversation about the wide receivers and who are going to be Josh's targets and who's going to be available and what's the ceiling for this pass catching group. And I've been saying all summer long that really what you should be looking at is how much heavy lifting can Joe Brady be doing. It's why I'm not head over heels over Keon Coleman because he made a bunch of great catches in the training camp.
Yeah, let's see it in a game.
And it's also why I'm not completely sold yet on the idea that we don't need Marvis Valdez-Scantling just because he's dropped a couple passes and people got it on video. I think that everything kind of comes out in the wash and there's, everything kind of finds the median. And Joe Brady is going to be the thing that either makes these guys high-level players or not. And so when I look at the offense, I'm not looking for them to go out and score 20 points and call it a win. What I'm looking for is when the quarterbacks are throwing the football, are they throwing 50-50 balls? Are they throwing balls that our wide receivers have to make these miraculous catches on? Or they have to work really, really hard in order to, hey, like I was stuck in man and my quarterback hung in the pocket and evaded some pass rushers and I made this all-star play? Or over the course of drives, are there just some layups built in there? Do we as a football team have release valves and things built into our approach based on the opposing personnel, where they're comfortable saying, okay, we called this, I see who they're putting on the field, show this formation, and depending on if it's man or zone, go to this thing? Because, Chris, the headset cuts out at 15 seconds?
Something like that.
Set these guys up for success so that I don't have to watch our wide receivers. Like, I know everyone's looking for that, right? There's a lot of people who go, oh, well, I got to see Matt Collins go out there and beat coverage and do all these things. What I'm looking for is to see if Joe Brady has it in him to make life easy on our backup quarterbacks. Can you go out there with a bunch of also-ran players and scheme up something, or compared to the defensive formations you're seeing and the approach that they take after the first drive or two, by the second quarter of this preseason game, are you finding a way to give our quarterbacks throws to open receivers? Or are you forcing them to throw to guys who are covered to mostly covered at best. Because that's going to go a long way towards us finding out if Joe Brady is up to the task of manning this offense, having lost some significant pieces last year. I mean, there's evidence to say he's good at it, right? He took over in the middle of the year last year. And I think he brought a lot of attention to guys who were somewhat relegated, right? Cook got more attention. Shakir got more run. Dalton Kincaid, he maintained his early season, like at least from a target perspective, and pretty much from a yardage perspective. But also his separation numbers were so much bigger if you look at NFL Next Gen stats. I want to see a continuation of that now that we don't have a Gabe Davis and we don't have a Stephon Diggs. I want to see that he has the ability to scheme something up that makes life easy on whoever's throwing the football. If you can do that, that will go a long way towards making me feel better about the first month and a half of the football season, given everything that's on our slate. Chris, we looked at it earlier. Who's on the schedule? Right out of the gate.
Oh, it's Cardinals, Dolphins, Ravens, Texans, somebody else.
Yeah.
Pretty tough sketch.
So while we have big body wide receivers who everyone's going to be clamoring to watch make big plays, I'd like to see them not have to work that hard if Joe Brady truly is growing as an offensive play caller. It'll be hard without your starters, admittedly. But I'm just looking to see how he fares in terms of the plays he calls and the options he gives his quarterback. Not just the options they choose to throw and everyone oohs and ahs over. Now, speaking of options people ooh and ah over, Chris, is Tyrell Shavers the next wide receiver hype beast for the Buffalo Bills?
Could be the next Brandon Riley. I guess we're ending the show with Gabe Stevenson.
Yeah. Now, here's a question, guys. How many of you remember the preseasons of long ago, where we would get enamored with a pass catcher and go, "Look at him in the preseason. He's clearly great. This guy's going to be an all-star." And then they either got cut or just made the team and proceeded to do absolutely nothing with the opportunity. Like, what are some of the names?
Yeah, let us know in the comments.
I want to hear in the comments,
Yeah.
what are some of the names that you guys remember rooting for and then watching just get unceremoniously dumped?
Your Brandon Rileys. That's like the only one I can think of.
It's like the 18-year-old girl with bifocals who gets dumped after prom night and doesn't understand why. It's like, oh, no, yeah, like it was cool. And it was fun while it was going on, but now, I mean, I'm going off to school and I'm going off to college. I don't know what the hell you're doing. We're just going separate ways. That's all I know. Is Tyrell Shavers one of these guys? I've been questioning this for weeks because I'll tell you what, I'm an Alabama fan. I watched Shavers play, and I didn't think much of him then. And I don't think much of him now. And I seem to be in the minority because everybody yelled, like, Chris, look up his RAS score. I guess when you look at the fact that they're having him line up with position versatility. So he's all over the formation. They say he's taking slot snaps. He's taking boundary snaps. He's doing everything as I sit here and eat grapefruit. I have an easier time swallowing this than I do talk that Tyrell Shavers is going to become a great NFL wide receiver. God, that's bitter. Yeah. Tyrell Shavers of a 4.68 40-yard dash. Terrible 10-yard split. He ran a 3.32 second 10-yard split. Chris, it took him almost 4 seconds to run 10 yards. Do you think we could do that?
Probably. I'm going to have to pull up his photo. Like, look at that. You see that? Tyrell Shavers on the screen there. See that? Looks like he was in House Party with
Oh
that
my God,
with that
I hate-
haircut. He looks
So,
like he belongs
Steve
in
Noble.
that movie.
Steve Noble. Steve, I hope your last cook went well, brother. I love you. I'm happy to see you here. Steve Noble, steak connoisseur, steak cooking champion in the comments. I love this guy. Here's what I love. Lance McCutcheon.
I don't even know who that is.
Lance McCutcheon.
Is that a fake name?
I like Steve Noble says Mackenzie killed it at camp 2 years ago and then was awful during the season. Yes. And then he says, but Hodgins is the guy that compares the Shavers. Don't say that too loudly. Chris, earlier this evening, we had his Pro Football Reference page up. Go ahead and pull that back up so we can revisit this from our last podcast. Isaiah Hodgins gets talked about by Bills fans because they were like, oh, he was good. And then injuries robbed him of what could have been a cool career. Was he, or was he just a one-hit wonder? Is he like the tub thumping by Chumbawamba of wide receivers? What are some other, Chris, where you're looking that up, what are some other great one-hit wonder songs?
God.
Like, I remember there was a song.
How about Blur Song 2?
Blur song. I bought that album. I bought the album that Blur Song 2 is on because I thought it was going to be great. I didn't realize they were British. It stunk. Do you guys remember New Radicals? You get what you give?
That's a classic.
I bought that CD. Luckily, I did it all through. Do you remember Columbia? Who here watching right now or in the comments is old enough to remember Columbia Music House? You'd take the stickers and stick them to the postcard and mail it away. And they were like, oh, well, we'll give you all these CDs for $13.
So my wife, Jessica, used to work at Borders Books.
Yep.
So she would get, because you could like open up CDs.
Yeah.
And we don't even have time for anybody in the comments that is under 20 to explain to them what a CD is. But she would get, like, they would mail CDs to Borders that would be played within the store. And she would get to, like, take them home and listen to certain artists before they ever hit the shelves.
That's kind of cool. But so in that way, I believe that Isaiah Hodgins is a one-hit wonder because when he left the Buffalo Bills for the Giants, he gave everybody. Steve Noble's old enough that he got cassettes. Yes.
Ready for this?
Yeah.
Ready for this, Steve? So there's two things that I remember with my parents' musical library, and it's all with cassettes. My dad had Gordon Lightfoot, and my mom had Anita Baker cassettes.
Do you know what the first CD I ever purchased? The first CD I ever purchased was the Space Jam soundtrack. Do you know what the second one was? It was a CD version of the Top Gun movie soundtrack that I had owned on cassette for my entire childhood.
And we're going to bash me for one of the first CDs I ever bought was Live Throwing Copper. Not to mention the very first CD I ever bought was the self-titled album from Presidents of the United States of America. And I'm the asshole?
Listen.
You're buying movie soundtracks. I'm buying music from actual artists.
Kenny Loggins rules, and you know it. Kenny Loggins rules. Playing with the boys was awesome. Highway to the Danger Zone, my sons now sing while we're running around the swimming pool. That's it.
Yeah, Hexenball likes the
Full stop.
Sound Gun.
Top Gun soundtrack
yeah.
might be one of the finest albums ever made. Now, with that said, Isaiah Hodgins, for those of you out there who have revisionist history,
he's Maverick.
He was awesome, right? He went to the Giants. He left the Bills, and everyone screamed, oh, my God, how did we let him go? Oh, look at Hodgins. We're such bad evaluators of talent. I can't believe we missed on this guy. He left the Bills midseason, went to the Giants, and posted a stat line. 42 targets, 33 receptions, 351 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Chris, what was his stat line for the whole year of 2023?
17 games, 9 started, 33 targets, 21 catches, 230 yards. 3 touchdowns, 12 first downs.
12 first downs.
Worse than his 8 games he played in with the Giants the previous year.
It's hilarious to me that everyone gets bent out of shape about this when I go look. What you see in the preseason, what you see in limited sample size is not always reality. It's can you sustain it? Any player can have a breakout handful of games. Can you make a career out of it? Hodgins ain't one, right? And the Giants recognized it, which is why he only has 9 starts. They recognized pretty quickly. They're like, oh no, he's not the guy. All right, bump him down a peg. You had a good run, Linsanity, but it's over. I mean, they're New York City. They're used to that.
I'm going to need to get copies of Kyle's Fat with a PH Jams.
Fat Jams, yeah.
Fat Jams. I'm going to need that. It probably has Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Nirvana, and Mud Honey.
Mud Honey. Wow, that's a deep cut right there.
And they were in Black Sheep with Chris Farley.
I know. So, with that said, one of the final points, we round out my 5 questions. What's the defensive end situation going to be? And when am I going to get to hear or see anything positive about Casey Toohill? Now, I look at this and I say to myself, our defensive end room at the top is pretty much settled. We all know that, I think because of contract, Smoot's going to be on the team. And the fact that every veteran player who is a starter talks Smoot up about his preparedness, just the way he's consistent every single practice, game in and game out. They already know what they can expect from him at a professional level. That's 2 right there. If all of his fellow teammates think that about him, I'm sure the coaches also probably agree, in which case it's an uphill climb for anybody to try to unseat him. So now you've got your Rousseau, you've got your Miller, you've got your Epinesa, you've got your Smoot. There's maybe a 5th DN job out there. Which one of these guys is qualified to take it? I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, you've got Casey Toohill, who was signed before Smoot was. You've got Javon Solomon, who was drafted in the end of the 5th round this year, who people keep saying has had an impressive camp. I'm going to be interested to see which one of these depth defensive ends, who, because our starters won't play, are going to get a lot of snaps. I want to see somebody take a step forward. And I want to see with my own 2 eyes what we've been hearing in camp. Because all I've heard is pro Javon Solomon, and I really haven't heard anything about Casey Toohill at all. And unless they keep 6 defensive ends, which I find hard to believe, they're fighting each other for a starting job here. So in that way, Chris, I have to believe you give a little bit of weight to the draft pick, right?
You have to. You got more investment in them.
I think Casey Toohill has an uphill climb already. It'll be interesting to see if he has anything in the tank and what he brings to the table, knowing that the Bears are going to start their starting offense. If there was ever a time to make a play, it would be on those first couple drives, right?
Yeah.
And I really do think that the makeup of the defensive line as a whole is going to come under scrutiny because you're going to figure out, what do I need? Do I need an Eli Anku? Do I need a Deshaun Williams? Or is Dwayne Carter enough where I can go in with Austin Johnson, Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver, and Dwayne Carter, and then maybe stash an Eli Anku on our practice squad like we have for years, and just be comfortable with those guys and say, look, the rest of these defensive tackles might have tried. Thank you for coming. Thanks for eating a bunch of snaps on our behalf. Now go home, ice up, and we'll see you maybe again next year. I really do think that the way that these defensive ends, especially the guys who are going to be at the quote-unquote top of the depth chart for the game this weekend, the way that they play is going to go a long way towards figuring out. Like, I expect Smoot, Solomon, and Toohill to see a lot of snaps. Don't you?
I 100% will be watching your boy, Gabe Stevenson. I'm watching him Saturday because you're going to be horseback riding
No,
right?
not this weekend.
Not this week.
I'll be at a pool party.
Okay, you're pool partying. I'm gonna watch the game on Saturday. I'm gonna be looking for Gabe Stevenson. I'm gonna be looking for lariats, German suplexes, good leapfrogs. I'm gonna be, and if I'm watching, if I have,
You can't suplex in the NFL. You do know that, right?
I mean,
There is no cross-face chicken wing to save you when you get up against the left tackle in the NFL.
it might be a good move, but when I'm watching the game on Saturday, that third and fourth quarter when they put Stevenson in, I'll have my phone out recording the television for bad video graphics to tweet out pro Gabe Stevenson tweets from our account on Saturday.
I hate you so much. I can't wait to see, because you jerks have been tweeting at us for weeks. I don't care. Like, well, what do you think? I'm ashamed of the fact that I don't like Gable Stevenson? I like the fact that it made the Cover One Discord chat. I like the fact that some of you sickos went over there and took my hatred to Greg Thompson, who immediately was like, oh, well, I've never been more intrigued by a fringe roster player than this in my entire life. And he immediately messaged me and just sent me a picture of the entire conversation. It's hilarious. What? Oliver, you can't suplex in the NFL. It's not a crime the first time would be my response. Guys, Gable Stevenson is going to get Stevenson. There's no N. It's like the same way people want to call me Greer. It's stupid, but people do it. They do it all the time. Drew Greer. Why? Is it the haircut?
Well, no.
Like, that
doesn't make you white.
Is there something about me like that makes you want to put an R in my last name? Greer. Why? I don't get it. What's wrong with Gear or Geyer or Gieri or any of the other butcherings of my last name I've ever heard? Stop putting the R in there. That's actually offensive. Gable Stevenson is going to get, in my opinion, manhandled. And I can't wait to see it. I'm going to get bombed and just wait for that fourth quarter to roll around so that I can actively root against him, because I believe it's an affront to all things. I think it's an affront to good. I think it's indecent that he's here. And everyone goes, oh no, he beat Van Prang Granger on a rep. Woo! This solidifies. He belongs here. I'll tell you what. Wait for him to go out there and play a football team full of guys that aren't his friends and don't need to be nice to him. I think they are going to manhandle him. And I can't wait to see it. My question is, how badly does Gable Stevenson perform so badly in this game that they do not give him snaps next week? Or
do they?
Does he prove his case that maybe he belongs? What do you think's more likely? If we had to handicap we had to handicap it on Seagrams as we end the show, what do you think? You guys in the chat, how many Seagrams would you be willing to wager on Gable Stevenson not showing his ass to the entire country this weekend?
I think he'll get more reps in games 2 and 3, and it's only based on injury. Or if you've seen enough from some of your starters that he's going to be the guy for the second and third games. But I'm going to be sitting in front of that television on Saturday, and I'm going to be taking video clips with I'm going to be there just like this in front of my TV upstairs, recording Gabe Stevenson making tackles, German suplexes, lariats, leapfrogs, and then eventually he's going to turn heel.
I like the big JH99 in the comments. Hicksonbaugh just throwing it down. He's been playing on special teams as the gunner. Please, how about this? Yeah, leave him on the team, if nothing more than comedic relief. I want to see that guy run down the football field as a punt gunner. Guys, The NFL preseason is full of nonsense. Gable Stevenson's story just being one of them. I can't wait for this thing to meet either a disastrous end or for him to become the next piece of Bill's preseason lore. I can't wait to see how it shakes out, but for tonight, we got to get the hell out of here. A huge thank you to everybody who showed up and everybody who watched us live tonight. Everybody who interacted. Going back and forth with you guys in the chat during the show is easily one of my favorite parts of doing this, and one of the biggest reasons that we steered towards the video format. But Chris, the development of the studio took you how many years?
I mean, ever since we signed with Blue Wire, we literally my single. We literally have not made any money off of Blue Wire because every dime that we've gotten from doing this show from Blue Wire for playing ads has put into everything you see here. This microphone, that camera, this light, this monitor, this video switcher, that camera, that camera, that camera over there, that table, these monitors, lights, that sign that...
Hey, we built the table.
Yeah, we got it up from Home Depot, the butcher block. That sign that's hanging out on the wall with lights on it, everything that you see, we put all money back into the show.
And now look at it. Now we're thriving. And the fun part is... Allegedly, we're thriving. Allegedly. But realistically, Chris, it's all about love of the game, baby.
Yeah.
So, I love doing this. I love you guys.
We didn't pay for this.
Oh, yeah.
Because I asked for this for my birthday. This is a teleprompter. Look at this.
It's literally a teleprompter.
This is a teleprompter. We have a teleprompter.
It's a tablet that can. It's a tablet that can. If he mounted that to the camera, could show me all of my podcast notes while I was looking into the camera and reading them. And
We're not doing that.
And the beauty of it is, I know I wouldn't get shot while I was reading from it. With that said, we're wrapping. Guys, it's been fun. Thank you so much. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. And this has been your Rock Pile Report.